Across the vast tapestry of our planet, a recurring pattern emerges. It is a pattern of conflict, of disagreement that escalates into something far more severe. Nations, collections of people bound by shared lines on a map, often find themselves at odds. They may disagree over land, a precious resource that provides homes and sustenance. They might argue over access to water, the very lifeblood of civilization and agriculture. Sometimes the disputes are about ideas, about different ways of living or governing, which can be as fiercely defended as any physical territory. These conflicts are a fundamental, though sorrowful, part of the human story, a drama played out on the world stage for millennia. We see this behavior mirrored throughout the natural world. Animal territories are defended with great vigor. A pride of lions will protect its hunting grounds from intruders, ensuring its own survival. However, human conflict possesses a scale and complexity that is unique. Our capacity for organization allows us to form vast armies. Our ingenuity creates weapons of immense power. The reasons for our disputes can be deeply rooted in history, passed down through generations like heirlooms of animosity. It is this combination of advanced capability and ancient grievance that makes the conflicts between nations so profoundly impactful and often so devastating to the delicate balance of life. Consider the history of our species. It is a long and often turbulent chronicle, marked by the rise and fall of great empires. From the ancient skirmishes between city-states in Mesopotamia to the globe-spanning wars of the 20th century, the narrative is consistent. People have always gathered into groups, and these groups have often competed. This competition can drive innovation and progress. But when it turns to open hostility, the consequences are invariably tragic. Families are torn apart, homes are destroyed, and the natural environment itself becomes a casualty of the struggle, scarred by the machinery of war for years to come. And so, we must begin our journey by acknowledging this fundamental truth. The world we inhabit is one where harmony is often interrupted by discord. Nations and kingdoms, these great collections of human endeavor, can and do clash. They rise against one another for reasons both simple and profoundly complex. Understanding this reality is the first step. It is the necessary starting point for exploring why these events occur and what they might signify for our collective future. It is a sober yet essential observation of our shared human condition on this remarkable planet we call home. When we speak of a kingdom against a kingdom, we are describing a specific and powerful form of human conflict. This is not merely a small-scale disagreement or a border dispute. It represents a more profound division, where entire societies align themselves against one another. A kingdom, in this sense, can be a nation with its own government, its own army, and its own distinct identity. It is a sovereign entity, a large family of people organized under a single banner. When two such entities enter into conflict, the scale of the confrontation expands dramatically, affecting millions of lives and vast swathes of land. The causes for such large-scale conflicts are numerous and often intertwined. A kingdom may feel that its resources are threatened by a neighbor. Perhaps one nation has abundant oil, while another has fertile farmland, and the desire for what the other possesses leads to tension. Ideology is another powerful driver. Different systems of belief about how society should be structured or what is considered right and wrong can create deep and seemingly unbridgeable divides. History, too, plays its part. Old wounds and past injustices can simmer for generations, waiting for a single spark to reignite the flames of open hostility between entire peoples. The effects of such a clash are felt far beyond the battlefield. When kingdoms go to war, they divert immense resources away from the things that nurture society. Money that could have built schools or hospitals is instead spent on weapons and military logistics. Young people who might have become doctors, scientists or farmers are instead trained as soldiers and sent into harm's way. The very fabric of daily life is disrupted. Trade routes are severed, communication breaks down, and a pervasive sense of fear and uncertainty settles over the population, casting a long and dark shadow over their future. Ultimately, kingdom against kingdom signifies a fracturing of the human family on a grand scale. It is a formal, organized and total opposition between two or more large groups of people. It is a testament to our ability to cooperate on a massive scale, but for the purpose of destruction rather than creation. This type of conflict changes maps, topples governments, and leaves deep scars on the collective memory of societies. It is a powerful and sorrowful expression of human division, an event that ripples outwards, touching countless lives and reshaping the course of history in its wake. Our planet is not a static, silent sphere. It is a living, breathing entity, constantly in motion. Deep beneath our feet, colossal plates of rock known as tectonic plates drift upon a sea of molten mantle. They grind against each other, pull apart and collide with unimaginable force. When the stress from this slow, inexorable movement becomes too great, it is released in a sudden, violent shudder. This is an earthquake. For a few seconds or perhaps minutes, the very ground we trust to be solid betrays us, shaking with a power that can topple buildings, shatter roads, and reshape the landscape in an instant. These seismic events are not random acts of chaos. They occur along specific lines of weakness in the Earth's crust, known as fault lines. Many of the world's great cities have, by a quirk of geography, been built near these volatile zones. Places like Tokyo, Los Angeles, and Istanbul exist under the constant latent threat of the planet's inner turmoil. For the people living there, it is a fact of life, a risk that is accepted. But when the tremor does come, it serves as a stark reminder of the immense natural forces that operate completely beyond human control, a power that dwarfs all our own achievements. Earthquakes do not happen in isolation. Their effects can trigger other natural disasters, creating a cascade of destruction. A powerful quake beneath the ocean floor can displace a massive volume of water, generating a tsunami. These immense waves can travel across entire oceans at incredible speeds, crashing ashore with devastating force, sweeping away entire coastal communities. On land, the violent shaking can trigger landslides where entire hillsides collapse, burying villages and blocking vital rivers and roads. The initial tremor is often just the beginning of a much larger and more complex natural catastrophe. Therefore, when we hear of earthquakes happening in diverse and various places, it is a sign of the Earth's constant, dynamic nature. It is the planet simply behaving as it has for billions of years. Yet for us, its inhabitants, these events are profound and often tragic. They represent a fundamental vulnerability. They remind us that for all our technology and all our planning, we are guests on a powerful and sometimes violent host. The ground beneath our feet is not as certain as we might like to believe, and its sudden movements can bring sorrow on a truly immense scale. Alongside the violent upheavals of war and earthquakes, there exists a quieter, more insidious threat. This is the threat of famine. A famine is not simply a feeling of hunger. It is a widespread scarcity of food, a crisis that can grip an entire region or nation. It occurs when the delicate chain of food production and distribution is broken. This can happen for many reasons. A prolonged drought may parch the land, causing crops to wither and die in the fields. Conversely, relentless floods can wash away fertile topsoil and drown the harvest before it can be gathered. Human actions can also be a direct cause of famine, often exacerbating natural conditions. War is a primary catalyst. When kingdoms clash, fields often become battlegrounds. Supply lines used to transport food are cut off. Farmers may be forced to flee their land, abandoning their crops and livestock. In some tragic cases, food itself is used as a weapon, with one side intentionally starving another into submission. In these instances, famine is not an accident of nature, but a deliberate act of conflict, compounding the suffering of an already afflicted population. The impact of a famine is slow, creeping, and utterly devastating. It weakens the body and the spirit. It forces families to make impossible choices, leaving their homes in desperate search of sustenance. This mass movement of people, known as migration, can put immense strain on neighboring regions, creating new social tensions. Children are especially vulnerable, as malnutrition in their formative years can lead to lifelong health problems. Famine hollows out a society from within, leaving behind a legacy of loss and a deep collective trauma. that can take generations to heal. So, when we hear reports of famines in different places around the globe, we are witnessing a fundamental crisis of survival. It is a sign that the basic systems supporting human life have failed. Whether caused by the whims of climate or the cruelty of conflict, the outcome is the same widespread hunger and profound suffering. Like earthquakes, famines remind us of our dependence on the natural world and the fragility of the systems we have built. It is the silent cry of a population in distress, a sorrow that unfolds not in a sudden cataclysm, but in a slow, agonizing decline. When we look at these events, wars, earthquakes, and famines, we must see them not as isolated incidents, but as interconnected threads in a larger tapestry of global suffering. They are not separate stories happening to distant peoples. In our modern interconnected world, the impact of a crisis in one corner of the globe can ripple outwards, touching lives thousands of miles away. A war between two nations can disrupt the global supply of essential goods like grain or oil, causing prices to rise for everyone. This can lead to economic hardship and food insecurity in countries that are not directly involved in the conflict. Consider for a moment the journey of a displaced family. Fleeing a war-torn homeland, they might seek refuge in a neighbouring country. This sudden influx of people can place a tremendous strain on the host nation's resources, such as its food supplies, water and housing. If that host nation is already struggling with its own challenges, such as a drought, the situation can quickly become a humanitarian crisis. In this way, the sorrow of war spills over, merging with the sorrow of potential famine, creating a complex and compounding problem that affects many more people than the initial conflict did. Natural disasters also have far-reaching economic consequences. An earthquake that damages a major manufacturing hub can disrupt global supply chains. The production of essential components, like computer chips, might be halted. This can affect industries all around the world, leading to job losses and economic slowdowns in places that felt no tremor at all. A severe famine, likewise, can create political instability in a region, which in turn can affect international relations and global security. The suffering of one group of people, whether from conflict or catastrophe, is rarely contained. This interconnectedness means that these sorrows are, in a sense, shared. The sadness that begins with a battle in one kingdom, a tremor under one city, or a failed harvest in one region does not end there. It travels along the pathways of trade, migration and communication that link us all together. The problems of one part of the world can, and often do, become the problems of the entire world. Understanding this is crucial. It transforms these events from distant news reports into matters of shared human concern, a collective experience of a world facing immense and interwoven challenges. There is a profound and ancient perspective that views these events, these wars, famines and earthquakes, not merely as random tragedies, but as signs. This perspective, found in prophetic texts, suggests that these occurrences are part of a larger, unfolding narrative. They are described not as the end itself, but as the beginning of sorrows. This is a crucial distinction. It frames these difficult times as a prelude, like the first pangs of childbirth, that signal a momentous event is yet to come. It suggests that these widespread troubles are merely the opening act in a much greater and more intense drama for the world. To understand this concept, think of a gathering storm. At first, you might see dark clouds forming on the horizon. Then, the wind begins to pick up, and you hear the distant rumble of thunder. These are the initial signs. They are not the storm itself, but they warn you that the full force of the tempest is approaching. In the same way, the prophetic view sees the clash of kingdoms and the upheavals of the natural world as these early warnings. They are indicators that the state of the world is shifting, moving towards a period of even greater trial and tribulation. This idea, honestly, challenges us to see these events with a different kind of awareness. It is not about predicting the exact time or place of the next earthquake or conflict. Rather, it is about recognizing a pattern. When these varied troubles, social, political and natural, begin to happen with increasing frequency or intensity across the globe, it serves as a collective alert. It suggests that the business as usual state of the world is being fundamentally shaken. The sorrows we witness are significant in themselves, but their greater significance may lie in what they herald for the future. Therefore, when we see nations in conflict, hear of devastating famines, and feel the earth tremble, this ancient wisdom encourages us to consider the possibility that we are in a special time. It is a time described as just the beginning of sorrow. This does not mean we should despair. Instead, it is a call to be awake, to be observant, and to understand the gravity of the times we are living in. It reframes our understanding of current events, suggesting they are not just isolated news cycles, but chapters in a much older and more significant story about the destiny of our world. Recognizing that these events might be the beginning of sorrows is not meant to inspire fear, but to foster a deeper understanding. To understand the signs of the times is to be like a wise farmer who watches the sky. The farmer does not fear the clouds, but understands what they mean. He sees the signs of coming rain and prepares his fields accordingly. He sees the signs of a coming frost and takes steps to protect his crops. In the same way, understanding these global events as signs allows us to prepare our hearts and minds rather than being caught by surprise or overwhelmed by anxiety. This understanding requires a shift in perspective. It means looking beyond the immediate headlines and seeing the larger patterns at play. When we hear of a war, we can see it not just as a political event, but as a symptom of the brokenness in human relationships. When we learn of a famine, we can see it not just as an agricultural failure, but as a sign of our planet's fragility and our collective responsibility. An earthquake becomes more than a geological event. It is a powerful reminder of our vulnerability and the need for humility in the face of nature's immense power. This awareness helps us navigate a world that can often seem chaotic and frightening. It provides a framework, a way to make sense of things that might otherwise feel random and meaningless. By seeing these events as part of a larger, foretold pattern, we can find a strange sort of stability. It is the stability that comes from knowing that even in the midst of turmoil, there is a larger story unfolding. This does not lessen the tragedy of the events themselves, but it can help us endure them with a sense of purpose and a clearer view of the road ahead. Ultimately, paying attention to these signs is an act of wisdom. It is about being informed, not just about politics or geology, but about the deeper currents of the human condition. It encourages us to ask bigger questions. Why is there so much conflict? How can we live more harmoniously with each other and with our planet? What is our role in these challenging times? By engaging with these questions, we move from being passive spectators of world events to being thoughtful and prepared participants, ready to face the future with open eyes and a resilient spirit. Faced with such immense and sorrowful events, it is easy to feel powerless or to turn away in self-preservation. However, understanding these times as the beginning of sorrows should not lead to apathy. On the contrary, it should awaken within us a profound sense of empathy and a desire to act. When we recognize that suffering is widespread and interconnected, it calls us to respond not with fear, but with compassion. It is a call to strengthen the bonds of our shared humanity, especially when the world seems to be fracturing. This is perhaps the most important response we can have. Empathy begins with acknowledging the pain of others as real and significant, even if it is happening far away. When we hear of a kingdom rising against another, we can make an effort to see the human faces behind the headlines, the families displaced, the children frightened, the soldiers caught in circumstances beyond their control. When a famine strikes, we can imagine the gnawing hunger and the desperate choices parents must make. This act of compassionate imagination is the first step toward breaking down the walls of indifference that so often separate us. This empathy should then translate into action, however small it may seem. The challenges of war, famine, and natural disasters are vast, and no single person can solve them. But our collective response is made up of individual actions. This can mean supporting organizations that provide aid to refugees or victims of natural disasters. It can mean being a voice for peace and understanding within our own communities. It can mean reducing our own consumption to lessen the strain on global resources. Every act of kindness, every gesture of support adds a drop of compassion to a world in desperate need of it. In a time when forces seem to be pulling people apart, the most powerful counter-response is to come together. The sorrows of the world are a test of our collective character. Will we retreat into our separate tribes, blaming and fearing one another? Or will we recognize our shared vulnerability and reach out a hand to help? The beginning of sorrows then becomes a powerful call to action, a call to be more generous, more understanding, and more united. It is an invitation to build bridges of compassion in a world where walls of hostility are constantly being erected. Even as we survey a world marked by conflict and catastrophe, a world experiencing what may be the beginning of sorrows, it is essential that we do not lose sight of hope. Hope is not the naive belief that difficult times will simply disappear. Rather, it is the quiet confidence that even in the darkest of nights, the dawn will eventually come. The same prophetic traditions that speak of these sorrows also speak of a future where they will cease to exist. They point towards a time of ultimate renewal, a new beginning for all of humanity and for the planet itself. This hope for a better future is a powerful and sustaining force. It gives meaning to our struggles and our efforts to show compassion. It assures us that the suffering we see is not the final chapter of the human story. The vision is one of a world where nations will no longer rise against one another, where the weapons of war will be transformed into tools of agriculture. It is a future where the earth is healed, where famine is a distant memory, and where sorrow and crying will be no more. This is the ultimate promise that lies beyond the present troubles. Holding on to this hope changes how we live today. It frees us from the despair that can paralyze us. It empowers us to work for peace and justice, not because we believe we can perfect the world on our own, but because we are aligning ourselves with that promised future. Every act of kindness, every effort to heal division becomes a small reflection, a tiny preview of the world that is to come. It is an expression of faith in the belief that love and restoration will ultimately have the final word over conflict and decay. Therefore, as we observe the troubling signs of our times, let us do so with a dual vision. With one eye, we must soberly acknowledge the reality of the sorrows around us. But with the other, we must look steadfastly towards the horizon for the glimmer of a new dawn. Understanding the beginning of sorrows is important, but clinging to the hope of its end is what will give us the strength to endure. It is this enduring hope that can guide us through the darkest of valleys, confident in the promise of a peaceful and restored world that awaits on the other side.